It's time to mind your business with me, Jamillah Lodge. Tune in to find out how to mind your business with BEDC, special guest entrepreneurs, industry experts, and more. Brought to you by BEDC. Bermuda Business starts here. Welcome to Mind Your Business.
Thank you.
Of course, you know me. I'm your host,
Indeed.
Jamillah. But no, I'm excited to have you here. Jache Adams, you are the chairman of the BEDC Board, and you also a representative in Parliament.
Yes.
But today we want to talk about you and your vision for BEDC.
Sure.
As the chairman. So before we get started, you want to just share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Jache Adams. As you said, was elected in Parliament October of 2020. Prior to that, was working at Butterfield Bank for about 12 years, worked in both the Bermuda and Cayman office. Once I left that role, I became the advisor to the Minister of Finance.
Okay.
So I often tell people that politics is literally my entire life at this point. At this point, but no, totally enjoying it.
Okay.
It's an interesting experience. And then obviously joined the board of BEDC back in 2018. Mm-hmm. And now this will be my second year being the chair, so this is exciting. Absolutely, I enjoy it.
So what was there a difference between just being a member and the chair? How does it feel now as a chairman of the board for 2 years?
It's an interesting thing because you have more of a say, more input, more control. But at the same time, you recognize that it's a collective effort. Mm-hmm. So, I would just say, I'm more at the head, but at the same time, I'm still a part of a team.
Right, mm-hmm. Exactly. So for me, mm-hmm. It has been a pleasure working with you.
Thank you.
But I think we have an interesting dynamic, right, with BEDC since we are a quasi-government organization. Yeah. And so sometimes a lot of the initiatives that we work on are being led or guided by the government.
Yes.
And so how does that, being a member of Parliament,
sure.
and then also being the chairman, how do you try to create separation, or how does that work together?
I mean, naturally, you have to create some sort of separation, but at the same time, so I am very much aware that I wear multiple hats when I'm in the room. And so, those are things that I have to be cognizant of. Mm-hmm. I recognize that as a Quengo, if you will, we do have a lot of our objectives mm-hmm. sort of or guidance coming from the government, but at the same time, there's a level of independence that we have mm-hmm. that we can exercise because at the end of the day, we know our clients mm-hmm. and we know how to best serve them. Not to suggest that the government doesn't, but we're the ones in the field, and so we have to take sort of that independence and sort of rather than us, and it's a relationship. Mm-hmm. So what I mean is rather than it being solely the BEDC receiving directions,
right.
It is us because we're in the ground, because we know our clients, mm-hmm. It is us making the recommendations to the government as well. So I see sort of that relationship. Mm-hmm. And so it's an interesting experience sort of being in the middle of
I don't envy you. Because from our standpoint, I can only speak for me. I'm like, okay, we got somebody on the inside.
Yes.
This is what we need to do. So from the standpoint of the objectives and the goals that we set for BEDC and its mission, how do you think that aligns with overall what the government's mission is? I feel like we're pretty, but what
absolutely.
do you think? Yeah.
So absolutely. I mean, the government, for example, as we know, the Minister of Economy and Labor mm-hmm. Recently rolled out an economic development strategy. Mm-hmm. There were 4 priorities, 4 or 5. It's going to kill me that I can't remember, but 4 or 5. Anyway, nonetheless, one of the priorities is actually focusing on entrepreneurs mm-hmm. and small business development. So it is absolutely, and the government recognizes that the BEDC is its vehicle to accomplish this. And so there's a lot of synergies there. The government certainly is focused and recognizes that entrepreneurship is a part and a bedrock of today's society.
Yeah.
And so it is absolutely a focus to see our young entrepreneurs thrive in this economy.
So I will say you have had experience working, like for the bank, et
Sure.
cetera, and now within government, but you've also had experience as an entrepreneur
Yes.
as well. How do you think that experience helps you to make decisions for the board as well as for the country?
Yeah, so it's an interesting thing. You experience is sometimes the greatest teacher,
Yes.
right? And so certainly that experience that I've gained as a small business owner, if you will, I feel is invaluable. So one of the things that it allows me to focus on is a lot of the bureaucracy, a lot of the red tape that we can sort of be able to navigate through and try to alleviate. How can we make this transition of becoming an entrepreneur as seamless as possible? And so having gone through it,
Right.
it allows me to say, hey, is this really necessary, or how can we make these efficient? So rather than someone filling out multiple forms, let's
Right.
get all the information on one form and you
Yes.
only have to fill it out once. Or let's have a central repository where all of the information is set, and so I don't have to keep having to give multiple utility bills to
Yeah.
several different people.
Right.
Here's my utility bill. If you want it, go research.
Go to this
that
one.
space.
Yeah.
Exactly. So these are the sorts of things that's being discussed, and but it is having gone through that experience that allows me to be able to put some of those ideas forward.
And say, really, we do need this.
Correct.
They
Yes,
saying it,
absolutely.
but I can tell you
I can
that
tell
it's
you,
true.
I can absolutely attest to it.
So on that note,
Yes.
when is that going to happen? Because that is, I know we've discussed it, like having a concierge kind of service or something like that. Are there any other kind of goals or objectives that you think of, either as a result of having been an entrepreneur, but certainly being the chairman of the board? Are there any things that we're currently not doing that you would like to see us focusing on or trying to put forward for consideration?
I think my focus is less about introducing a new idea and more about taking an existing idea and how can we grow and expand.
Okay.
So, I think of, and I often say it all the time, that I think the work that the BEDC does is tremendous. And so the focus is not necessarily what aren't they doing, but how can we take what they're doing to the next level.
Okay.
And so a great example for me is a vendor market.
Yes.
Right? But right now, I envision how can we sort of expand it. So, for example, how can we get more vendors at a football game, at a cricket game? How
Okay.
can we get more vendors at the Round the Island boat race where all those people are congregated? Things of that nature. How can we create more events such as Harbor Nights where vendors have the opportunity? I often say a great statistic for me is that every year, Bermuda has a great advantage where every year, about hundreds of thousands of people, visitors and people who come here for business, come to this island.
Right.
How can we tap into that, and so for the advantage of our entrepreneurs?
Right.
So these are the sorts of things that I know the BEDC is working on. So we have a vendor market and we do vendor activities.
Yes.
And so the focus is how can we now expand
Make 'em
it
bigger
and make
and
it
better.
bigger and
Yeah.
better for the advantage and benefit for our entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. I think there's huge opportunity, and so we start thinking about like what we can do, and we're like,
Sure.
hopefully the board will agree and approve. But as always, there's costs associated
Yes.
with it, and so as you know, BEDC is dependent on a government grant, and that's always like a tenuous
Sure,
kind of
of
relationship.
course.
You're like, you got to manage the budget, but then you need more money to do this.
Of course.
So how do you think creatively about how we can do it? Because bigger sometimes costs more.
Yes. Yeah.
And over the years, we have tried very hard to develop and create public-private partnerships, right, to support us. For example, Global Entrepreneurship Week, right? That's something that we do every November, and it's gotten bigger and bigger over the years. But we couldn't do it just based on our budget alone.
Sure.
So we actively seek out partners in the industry, Butterfield Bank being one, HSBC, all of the banks and people that we have existing relationships with. What are your thoughts around leveraging sort of that private sector to support some of the things, like you said, how do we make these vendor markets bigger? What can we do?
We have a great advantage. So there's two separate things. So the first thing I want to say is when we're talking about sometimes making things bigger, costing more, I think ultimately what we need to do as a team, as a BEDC team, is create a cost-benefit analysis. Because I don't think there's an objection to investing more if we can demonstrate that there's more that can come out of it, if I'm making any sense.
That makes sense.
So we need to be able to present, say, we need more money, but here's how here's why, and here's the benefit, and the benefit certainly outweighs the increase of the ask. How can we take advantage of our private partners? I think one of the great examples is the Global Atlantic Initiative, right? How tremendous is that? Right? This is now taking our rocket pitch ideas and making it bigger, right? And so, so there's parts of it is demonstrating that this is a success so that we can pitch it to other private partners, but also I think the private partners are beginning to have more of a social conscience and more trying to be more involved in the local community. And so they're now beginning to reach out to us and say, what events are you holding? How can we assist? And so it's being able to almost have that information readily available. Here's the things that we do. Here's some of the great ideas that some of our entrepreneurs have. And the only limiting factor, if you will, is access to capital. And now that we're talking about access to capital, that is a great idea because for traditionally the BEDC's version of access to capital is debt.
Yes, that's correct.
And I often liken debt to fire, right? It is great when it's working with you, but it can be totally devastating if it's working against you.
That is so true.
And so, it can be something that entrepreneurs can use to leverage to become successful, or it can be the thing that weighs them down and they can't seem to come up for air, right? And so if we can find new and more innovative ways for these entrepreneurs to access that capital to expand their business without having the obligation, not necessarily obligation, but more of better management of how to control their cash flow and things of that nature so that it allows them to grow, I think we'll be all the better for it.
I would agree with you. I mean, most startups really don't need debt, right? Because they need time. And it's very hard when you're getting a loan to have the time because the bank, as you know, in your previous role as a banker, it's like, okay, we'll get this money, but next month, guess what?
Of course.
You're going to have to start paying down on that loan. So we know from experience, and as an entrepreneur and having worked in the bank, I'm sure, working with startups and new startups, that it's time that's really needed in addition to the capital. So I know we have certainly put programs in place. As you know, we just graduated some of our incubatees from Enterprise Bermuda.
Very excited about that.
And so seeing some of them come into the program, the 12-month program, with an idea, right? And then at the end, have a full-on business where they're getting earnings and stuff. It's really rewarding, at least for me. So from your standpoint, what would you consider the most rewarding part of working with BEDC, especially as the chairman?
Working from an entrepreneur perspective, or
I'll ask you both questions. So tell me from an entrepreneur perspective, and then also because you are at the table, right? You see the behind the scenes, you see the things that we put forward and that sort of thing. So I would like to know how you feel both ways.
So I often look at the BEDC as having two major pillars, right? And the first being business development. So as we say with the incubator program and the other programs and courses that we offer, it is sort of tailoring what we do specific to an entrepreneur. Every entrepreneur is different, every business is different, and so we sort of have a relationship with these entrepreneurs and ask ourselves, how can we better serve that individual and help their business develop?
Right.
The second pillar that I look at is the economic development. It's the concept that rising tides raises all boats, right? And so how can we create an environment that allows a particular segment, a particular industry, a particular area to thrive, no matter what the business is? And so those sort of two pillars run hand in hand. And so it's interesting because, as the BEDC originally started as the small business thing, so that's our bread and butter, right?
Yes.
Being able to focus on developing business. And now it's sort of shifting and expanded for our focus to now be on economic development. And so it is... The focus for me as chair is demonstrating and being able to progress both sides.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Yeah, that's not an easy task,
No.
right? Because I think the roles and the requirements differ.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? I think
skill sets, everything.
all of that differs. And so having been here for so long.
No one's counting.
So
it,
nobody's
right?
counting. I feel like I've seen the transition, right, from the small business, from that primary product of being the loan guarantee to now trying to provide all of these programs to support those who get the financing and things like that. Because at the end of the day, we still want them to succeed. But previous to that, they're like, I just need the money. Give me the money and let me go.
Sure.
And you're like, but hold on a second.
Yeah.
Do you have an accountant?
Correct.
Are you doing forecasting? Like, have you identified your customer?
Absolutely.
So all of these things, I think, go hand in hand with like the two pillars that you mentioned. So, of course, in addition to what we just do regularly, y'all, and by y'all,
I'll take it.
I mean, your friends in government.
I'll take it.
I mean, it's exciting because I feel like you guys, when you're sitting around having your discussions, right, around your table, you're coming up with creative solutions for problems that exist on a national level in Bermuda. And oftentimes that filters down and comes back to BEDC around what kind of initiatives or programs can we implement to address those issues. So, for example, when COVID hit, nobody expected it, and these businesses were struggling, and y'all were like, okay, we got to do something. So we figured out a way to support these businesses. Thank you to the government for giving us the funding to be able to do so. So all of that to say, we do have a list of things that the government would like us to work on. And I want to ask you, based on that list.
Go for it.
And I know one of the things that I think you're going to say is,
that's it.
I'm responsible for it, but I'll let you tell the people. What is one of the newest programs or projects that we're working on that you're most looking forward to seeing launched?
Sure. So the first thing, if I'm being truthful and honest, and I'm sort of not taking my individual hat on and thinking of a collective government, the government recognizes that the country is in a housing situation where we need to facilitate increasing the supply of residential homes on the island. And so we've come up with a number of initiatives and things that we can do to spur some of that development. But most notably would be our approved residential schemes. And so if I was to say what is the government's number one priority, particularly amongst BEDC initiatives, it is 100% developing and seeing progress with our approved residential schemes. That allows for large-scale residential development within our EEZs, helps to stimulate activity within the EEZs. It is, as we know, our EEZs are, for the most part, areas that haven't seen that level of investment as other areas. So there's so many benefits that the approved residential scheme brings. And so taking the individual hat off and speaking for a government is absolutely the approved residential scheme. Now, having that, with that being said, I have a personal interest and would love to see us being able to get across and accomplish our online virtual market. That is a part of our economic recovery plan item. It is a focus of mine that I would love to see. I think it speaks tremendous and has tremendous value and benefits for our entrepreneurs. And so seeing that across the line and you often hear me say it's not just having the online market available,
right,
but having our entrepreneurs use it. That is the benefit benefit from it.
Yes.
And so I recognize you've got to crawl before you walk, and so I need an operating online market first before we begin to have entrepreneurs on board.
Yes.
But that is absolutely a focus of mine, and as chair, you know that I can continue to hammer and look forward to when we can cut the ribbon on that.
We're almost there. Transactions have gone through.
Awesome.
We're looking forward to
Awesome. You heard it here first.
So no, I would agree with you. I mean, I think at the end of the day, the whole ethos of these conversations and coming up with, solutions to problems, right? The whole reason we were like, we should do this is because we recognize that the smaller micro entrepreneurs are not necessarily in a financial position to take on the burden of creating a merchant account and paying the fees associated with doing so, and that no matter whether or not you make a transaction or not, you have to pay, right? And so for us, seeing a virtual market by Bermuda come to life would alleviate that problem, I think, and the barrier to entry with the goal of having them be able to develop eventually their own online presence, their own online marketplace. And so, again, we're taking this baby business and seeing it grow and mature into a full-fledged
and it's
business.
Actually consistent with who and what we do, right? It's very similar to the incubator program, right? It recognizes that for many of our businesses, the toughest part is starting, it is growing, it is the early stages. And so our role in terms of support is how can we make that as seamless as possible and help you along the way. And so the online market, not only does it increase your exposure, but you also get a space where you can really understand the demand. You can begin the process, right? You know, do people like your product?
Right.
What don't they like? Do they like your price? Things of that nature. So it allows you, so it's beyond just the saving of fees.
Right.
This becomes a testing market to allow you to sort of grow and develop.
You get it. See, I think for us, we're benefiting from the fact that you have the varied experience, right? So you do get it, right? I think it's really important too, because sometimes, if you're coming in, because we on our board, we have a nice representation, I think, in all of the sectors, which I think is important to get the different opinions, and we partner with these different organizations. But understanding, like you said, from an entrepreneurial perspective or small business owner perspective, what some of the challenges are, it's like it's the pot calling the kettle black. I don't have to tell you, right? I'm preaching to the choir already. So in terms of the products and programs that we put on, how do you feel, what would happen if we didn't have them? Like, what is the actual impact, do you think, of BEDC being here and providing the products and services that we have?
That's an interesting question because it's sort of hypothetical, but let's play the game,
because we're never going anywhere.
Exactly. What I think, and I'm proud of the BEDC for doing this, is it begins to drive home the message that there is success, there is a future in entrepreneurship.
Yes.
We continue to hammer that home because, as we know, a large segment of the community believe that success means certain things, accountants, doctors, lawyers, things of that nature. And it's incorrect because it assumes that everyone can fit in a particular box.
That's right.
And we're all individuals. There are creatives. There are people who are trying to fix problems, people who just want to be their own bosses and things of that nature. And so by us demonstrating that you can be successful. By us being able to promote the successes that we have, it allows others who perhaps are fearful of taking that step to say, well, if he made it, so can I. I can do it too.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You're absolutely right. And I think that it speaks directly to the marketing campaign and the marketing of our services. Yeah. If you look around our office and things like that, we are highlighting businesses and entrepreneurs who have come to BEDC, who have started their businesses. And what we wanted to do by doing that is so people see their reflection, right?
Absolutely.
They're like, I know that person.
Sure.
Oh, they went to BEDC?
Sure.
Let me give it a try, you know. And our tagline is Bermuda Business Starts Here, because why not?
Why not? And it's an interesting thing, though. I was at the recent graduation, and I said to a board member who was sitting next to me, I said, you know, I often see in these events, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I often see in these events that many of the entrepreneurs that take advantage of our products and services tend to be women.
Yes.
Right? And so we were sort of, and this is sort of us brainstorming, right? How do we, is that a good thing?
Yeah.
How do we get more men involved? What's holding them back? And so in terms of things that we can do better, things that we can work on, is sort of getting that data. Maybe it's speaking to some men and saying, you know, how can we better serve you? What is stopping you from going to the BEDC? And things of that nature. So this is absolutely some of the things that we can do to get better and grow.
I love the little side hustle trying to, because you're absolutely right. What you recognize just from that is the truth. We often see the majority of the people that participate in our program are female. And so we recognize that, and we try continuously to see what we can do to attract them. So I would love to get the feedback from you as a male and an entrepreneur, as well as some of the other board members, to say, what is it? What can we do? What would make you come out and come to? From my own kind of thought process and having been here so long, I feel like maybe a lot of the small business owners or entrepreneurs who are male are in the trades, perhaps, right? And so from that standpoint, they just do it, right? They're like, I'm going to give me a truck. I'm just going to move forward. And it works. But what I would love to see is how we can help them to develop a mindset that it doesn't just have to be hustle hard every day to pay your bills, right? You can actually move this business into something
bigger.
Exactly.
A fleet of trucks. Absolutely.
Exactly. And so I think that has a lot to do with mindset. And accepting or even acknowledging that that is something that they want to do, because that's what I think maybe the challenge is. They're like, I'm fine, I'm good, I can go when I want, I can pay for my children's school fees and things like that, but do you want more?
I certainly absolutely agree with that, and I think there's also a concept, or I shouldn't say definitively, but I believe there's also an opportunity where, for the most part, it may not be as masculine to think of yourself as asking for help and assistance. And, you know, it is the ability in your mind to say, I'm going to do it on my own. I'm going to make it, and I don't need anyone's help. So, but speaking to what you were saying, is our job is to get you from thinking of a one truck, because you can absolutely make it on a truck on your own. But we have the skills, the necessary resources to help you now become an owner of a fleet of trucks.
That's right.
And it's what we want to do. It's what we are here for. So it's I think it can happen. It will happen. And it's certainly a direction and a focus that we can get into.
Okay, so I'm adding that to my to-do list.
But after the market.
Okay, I guess you're telling me to focus. That's why we have a team. So
Indeed. Fair enough. Yep.
No, but I love that idea, and I love that you picked up on that, because it is, we have had discussions internally about that, and how do we attract more, especially our summer student entrepreneurship program. You know, like maybe if we start early enough, then they will get used to asking, and we can continue to support them. We're almost at the end, but I do want to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit about, or talk to a potential entrepreneur and just say why maybe they should consider it, and maybe what kinds of tips you would give them if for some reason they're just like, I don't know, I can't.
Sure. So I am always an advocate of independence. I love and would promote persons. Now, I recognize that entrepreneurship is not for everyone.
That's right.
Some people prefer the safety of knowing that they work for a well-established business and the paycheck is coming, because entrepreneurship, it comes with its sacrifices.
It sure does.
Absolutely. So, but I'm always going to be a proponent of independence. I love that, individuals are thinking outside of the box. And sort of, I love the idea of your success is largely up to you, right? So are you prepared to make that sacrifice? Are you prepared to make that investment? Are you prepared to go the extra mile and provide stellar service? But, the success of the business is largely up to you. And that sort of, gets me excited, as you can probably tell. But in terms of tips, what I would do, the first is to do the research. So many of our entrepreneurs walk in the door and they think they know it all, and they think they have the $1 million idea, and they just need our money, and it's just gonna it's gonna take off, right? But I think and we quite rightly help them and guide them to sort of put it from a concept onto a piece of paper. What are the risks? Have you studied the demand, your competitors, your strengths, your weaknesses? What sort of investment are we talking about? Things of that nature. What's the projected cash flow going to be? Things of that nature, because we have to recognize that Bermuda is a unique market.
It is.
And so, you have to demonstrate that you know this market, and so that you can thrive in it. But in saying that, sort of getting back to where I envision BEDC, it is also getting our entrepreneurs to focus outside of Bermuda, right? Part of the online market, is getting people to sort of exposure outside of our 21 square mile island, and allow their businesses to thrive. But ultimately, you can see I'm digressing a bit. But doing the research, staying committed, because we know there's going to be ups and downs. I would love to tell anyone that it's smooth sailing, that you just make a decision and it just thrives. But it comes with it is not true at all. There are going to be days when you want to throw in the towel. There are going to be days when you start to question, is this even worth it? And even sometimes you have to make that decision. Right?
That's true.
Is it worth it?
That's right.
But ultimately, I would encourage persons to stick with it. And then my third would be to be prepared to adjust and amend. Right? So as far as there is the notion of staying committed, but there's also a space where you may have to change tact.
That's right.
Right?
And that's okay.
That's absolutely okay. And so to be flexible enough to amend and adjust, and not sort of so rigid that you're going to have it this way and no other way will do. It's the ability to sort of being able to be objective and say, you know what? This isn't working quite the way I thought it would, but if we do this, we'll have a better outcome. Absolutely.
Love that. Listen, you got all the tips. No, I really appreciate you taking some time.
No, I appreciate you inviting
but this is a long time coming, right?
Indeed, absolutely. I really appreciate it.
No, I'm so happy to have you here. So happy for you to share with us what you think, because it aligns perfectly. And so I like to close out the show by saying, if you don't mind your business, who will?
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for tuning in to Mind Your Business with me, your host, Jamillah Lodge. Tune in next week, Thursday at 4 p.m. because if you don't mind your business, who will? Mind Your Business is brought to you by BEDC. Bermuda Business starts here.